Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. So this is ReactJS CRUD example using Zustand state management library. So what is Zustand? Zustand is a state management library. The Zustand is a small, fast and scalable state management library. Okay, small means there is no overloaded boilerplate code like we see in Redux. Okay, it is very simple and easily used. So it is straightforward to use and integrate some of its features. Okay, it contains hooks API and it is very easy to consume in React application. Okay, so the stand statement store itself we can consume like a hook. Okay, and it is very easy to use in our React components. Okay, it supports for async methods. So inside of this stand store, we can write async methods. So where we can implement our API calls. Okay, easily integrate with additional middlewares like Immer and DevTools. So it is also supports a lot of third-party libraries like Immer and DevTools, etc. So Immer is for updating the state of the store very easily. Okay, and DevTools is to track the state changes in our browser. Okay, like those libraries it supports. State can be accessed outside of the React components. Okay, so this just and store state can be accessed within our vanilla JavaScript code also. Okay, easily integrate with other state management library like Redux and React context APIs. Okay, you can integrate means you can mix up this just and store state management with the existing state management so that later on you can upgrade your entire application to this just and store management. Okay, so to accomplish a CRUD example application, let's start by creating the ReactJS application. And we know very well the command for creating the React application, that is npx space create hyphen react hyphen app. Okay, and then space name of your project. So let's create the React application. Project created successfully. Let's open the project. Here is our React project. Now, as a first step, let's install the React Bootstrap into our application so that I can use UI components into my application. So go to React Bootstrap website, click on the Get Started, and here we can find the command for installation. So copy that command and open the terminal, install the package. So package installed successfully. Now the thing we have to do, let's go to index.js file. Okay. And here, let me add the bootstrap reference. Okay. And let me remove some unwanted code for my demo, like report web vitals. And here also the method. And I will remove React strict mode element also. Okay. Finally, our index.js looks like this. Okay. Now I will create a React component and I will name it like layout. The main idea of this layout, it will have menu and footer, something that like a master template. Okay. For that, let's create a folder inside of the src like components, and inside of it I will create one more folder like shared, And inside of this shared folder, let me create my layout component. So as I mentioned, let's add the menu in this layout component. Since we are ready to use the React Bootstrap component, so go to React Bootstrap website and pick a navbar component from there. So here you can click on components and search for the navbar. And here there are a lot of examples and you can pick one of them for our application. So I'm going to pick this navbar and let's add it inside of these imaginary tags. Okay. For my menu, I don't have any navigation menu link. So I'm going to remove this nav element and here remove the href. And I want to use this navbar brand since in this demo I am dealing like creating or displaying the cakes, okay, like something like a cake website. Okay, so I will brand my website like cake store. So this navbar brand nothing but it represents like a logo or something like a heading for our menu. Okay, so now whatever the page content has to be rendered, I want to I want to display this menu in that pages. Okay, since I want to use it like a master template, here I have to create a placeholder. In that placeholder, I have to display all of my page contents whenever I navigate. So for that, first let me add a bootstrap component like container. Okay, and I am expecting any page content must be rendered inside of this container. For that, I can use children property. Okay, so I am going to destructure the property like this and I will write like children. This is called destructuring. Originally, we will input props, right? So here I am destructuring my props. So here I am reading the children property and here use the expression and try to render the children. So the main idea is whatever the page is loaded, that page will be received as a children component here. Okay. Now I can go to the app component, which is the entry component for the React application. So here let me get rid of the existing HTML code. Okay. And here I want to render my layout since layout is my master theme. So here I can render the layout element. Okay, so here whatever content I will add that will be received as a children and that will be rendered into this container. Okay, that is the main idea of defining the children props. Now let me create a home page for my sample application. Okay, so that is like a page level component. So I am not going to add those page level components in this folder. So for the page level components, let me create one more folder like pages. Okay, here I want to create a component now for home page. Okay, so I will name this component like all cakes. The basic idea of this component to display the all the items like a small cards. Okay, so let me add component like all cake.js. So I have a page component, right? Now I have to add route for this. For that, we have to install the React routing library like React Router DOM. Search it like React Router DOM npm, and here is the link for npm. So go to that website, and here is the installation command. Copy the command and open the terminal. install the package. Package installed successfully. Now we are ready to configure our routing for all cakes component. So for that, let me go to app component. So any route content, I have to add it as a layout element child, right? So inside of the layout, I can add routes element. Okay, that loads from the React router DOM. Okay, inside of this routes element, I can add individual route. Okay, so to this, we can define the path as one of the attribute. So mine is the home path, right? So, and here we have to configure or map our component to this path. For that, I can use another element like attribute like element. So to this element, I have to map my component. Okay, all cakes and self-closing tag. And we have to do one more additional route configuration, that is go to index.js, and here our app component must be wrapped around browser router element that loads from the React router DOM library. Okay, browser router element. So let's move our app component inside of those elements. Let's add some message to our all cakes. Okay, and let's run our application and test whether we are able to see our page component loading for the home route or not. And here you can observe I am missing some namespaces that regards to my navbar component. Okay, so let me go to the layout page. Okay, and here let me import the navbar component. And I want to remove this inside container. Inside of the navbar, there is a container, right? So why I am removing means I want full length navbar. So I am removing the container. If you use container, you can see some spacing at both the edges of the menu. So I don't want that. I want the full length menu. So I remove the container. So now our page is loading and you can see our menu and you can see the hello message that represents our landing page, our home page route loading its component like all cakes, right? So up to now we did general React JS stuff. Now let's move on to our store related things. So first thing is we have to install the Zustand library. So search like Zustand and you can see the GitHub link. So go there and you can see here command to install the Zustand, and there are a lot of basic documentation here. You can read them as well for your understanding. Okay, so the first step I have to install the Zustand. So copy that command. So open the terminal, install the package. So Zustand library installed successfully. Now let's try to create the store for maintaining our data. So first thing, let me create a folder inside of the SRC, something like store. Inside of it, I want to create my future store, something like about cakes. So I will name it like cakestore.js. So here let's implement the store. Okay. So export constant use cake store. Okay. And now we have to use a function like create So that loads from the Zustand. Okay, let me import the namespace from create from Zustand. Okay, so this is the store creating function. Okay, now here I can input an arrow function that returns the state information. Okay, and to this arrow function you can use something like set a variable. This set variable used whenever we want to update the state properties. Okay, now in this state object I am going to create a one property like cake data. Okay, so initially its value is empty. Okay, now for our demo purpose, let me add some static content in this array, and let's try to bind that or load that data into our all cakes. Okay, something like read operation with the static content. So let me add some static data here. Okay, this is my something like a tester data. So my card cake data is an array, and that array contains objects, something like properties. It will have ID, name, cost, and image URL. Okay. So in my store, I have some data inside of the cake data. Now I want to read this data into my all cakes component, and I want to render it on my UI. So the first thing is we have to read the data from the store. I have already mentioned Zustand is built up of the hooks API, right? So I can use this use cake store as a hook. Okay, so that I can listen for changes or I can read the changes. Everything I can do with this use cake store. Okay, so use cake store. And the thing is, first what I am for what I am declared this variable. I declared this hook to read the data from this cake data. For that we have to input the arrow function and we have to specify what type of data you are expecting from this use car store. So for that state dot and name of our store property. Okay, since I am expecting car data, right? We have to write it like this. So this is something like a action invocation if you want to compare, or something like a getter if you want to compare with the normal Redux kind of state management. Okay, so I will assign this data to something like constant all cakes. So I am expecting it should return the array of cakes. Okay, so I want to render it to my HTML. So for the display purpose, I want to use the React Bootstrap cards. So let's go to React Bootstrap website and go for cards. And let me go to the bottom. Okay, this is the example I want to add. So copy these HTML elements. Okay, before adding that, let me add a container here, Bootstrap container. Okay, and class name margin top 2 units. And inside of this container, let me add my Bootstrap cards. So here we have arrow column card. So let import these namespaces here. Okay. Card row column. Okay. And here there is some static array. Let me remove the static array. And I can pass my all cakes variable that listening for the use cake store hook. Okay, and here I will name it like cake, and we can add a key attribute for column to avoid the compilation issue of the React.js. Okay, I will assign the cake.id value to it. And here let me style little bit for image. Okay, object, I want to add the height from 400 pixels and width 100%. Okay, so here let's remove the src existing string and let's add our expression and bind the image URL property. So I'm expecting I'm going to get this object and I'm using these properties here to bind. Okay, and name of the card. So cake dot name, and here let me show the price. Okay, cake dot what is the property? Cost. Okay, cost. That's it. And let me display three columns. And I think we are good. Let's check whether we are able to fetch the data from our store and bind it to our UI or not. See how beautiful it is. And the content is rendering. That represents I am able to read the data from the store using the Zustand library. Okay. And as a developer, we know how to track the state changes. We know we have a browser extension like Redux. Okay. So we know for Redux or Redux toolkit, this Redux will automatically works. Same way, Justin also supports this tool. Okay, for now, if you check anything here, everything is empty because we haven't integrated the dev tools here. Okay, so but Justin also supports the dev tool. So let's integrate the dev tool and check the track of our state management. So let me go to my car store. Okay, and now I have to enable the dev tool for it. So it is very easy. Let me import the dev tools. Okay, from justin slash middleware slash dev tools. Okay, and import dev tools. Now wrap this entire arrow function with my dev tools. Okay, so dev tools. Okay, and save it inside of the dev tools. Right, so I can remove this. Okay, and save it. Okay, now if I go to my Redux extension and here you got something initial, and if you check like state, you can see the object. So our Justin supports the Redux DevTool browser extension as well. Okay, so next we are work on how to invoke the API and save that API response data into our Justin store and then retrieve that data from store to our React component. All these things we are going to work. Okay. So our main focus is to remove this static content and we have to implement the API call and that API response we have to push into our store state and then we have to retrieve that data from store into our all cakes component. Okay. So to use to consume API into our application, one of the best choice for learners, that is Json server. That is a fake Json server which we can set up into our local machine. So we no need to write any code. That is one benefit, and it is fully functional fake server. That means I can create a item, I can update a item, I can read the items, and I can delete the item at that server. Okay, so search like Json server and click on this npm link, and you can find a command here. So copy this command and open that command prompt anywhere in your application. Okay, so this command itself install the Json server globally. Okay, so first do this step. Since I have already done it, I'm not going to do it again. Okay, next thing, go to the GitHub repository. So here you can read some documentation regarding about the JSON server and how to use it. Okay. So to after installing JSON server globally, okay, if you want to run the server, you can create a folder anywhere. Okay. And within that folder, we have to open the terminal and we have to run this command. Okay. So what I will do, instead of creating a separate folder, I am directly create or set up the server inside of my React.js application. Okay. But one drawback it is, this JSON server by default runs 3000 port number, which is same as our React.js application default port number. Okay. But we can overcome this by specifying the port number explicitly. So let me go for command for port number also. So like this, you can specify port number explicitly and you can run the JSON server. So what I will do, copy this command and go to our application in the package.json for my convenience to run the server whenever I want. What I will do, inside of the script, I will add a one more script command so that using that command, I can run the server whenever I want. So I will name it like JSON server. You can give any command name and paste that command here. And I want to run the server at port number 4000. Okay. So now let's try to run the JSON server. So for that, let me open the terminal. Okay. And to run the JSON server, we have to type command like npm space run space and our script's command name. What is that name? JSON server. Okay. Enter it. So here you can see some server is trying to start at the port number 4000. And here you can see some endpoints are displaying in this console log. So what happens means whenever we run this command for the first time, okay, so the JSON server by default creates a db.json file. You can search like db.json. And here you can see some JavaScript object are a JSON format. Okay, both are same. So here, if you see objects, so each object is one endpoint. So those endpoints only here it is showing in the console log. Okay, but I don't want to use them. I want to add my own data and I want to receive that data as a response because this data will be written as a response when we access the endpoint. Okay, let me remove this data. Okay, and I will name it like cakes. Okay, and array. Inside of it, I will add my items that will be written as a response. So we have item in our cake store, right? So copy this item, cut, cut this item, okay, and add it here in the db.json. Okay. Now what happened means if you observe the console log here, you can see a new endpoint created. See here, slash cakes. So what JSON server will do, whatever objects we add here, that root object will be taken as a endpoint name. Okay. Now, if I try to access this on the browser directly, I am expecting this object as my response. So let's go to the browser and try to access it. See, I am able to read the API response. Like this, we can set up the fake JSON server, and it also supports all HTTP verbs. Nothing but, let me show you, get, post, put, delete. That means I can do entire CRUD operation by consuming this fake JSON server. Okay, so that's all about setting up the fake JSON server. Okay, now we have to consume that API into our application, right? So to consume that API into our application, I am going to install one of the most recommended library, that is Axios, which helps to communicate with the any kind of API calls. Okay, so search like Axios npm and click on the link. And here you can notice the command to install. So copy the command and go to our application and open the terminal. Now let's install the library. So Axios installed successfully. Now let's go to our cake store. And while explaining the key features of the Zustand library, it supports asynchronous actions or methods. So what I can do, I can write a asynchronous method, and inside of that asynchronous method, I can call my API call directly itself. Here. Okay. So I will name my function like get cake API. Okay, and it will be a asynchronous call. I will use arrow function, async arrow function. Okay, constant API response equal to await, and I can use Axios. See, and it is imports from the Axios. Okay, dot. It will provide default methods based on the HTTP request type. So I want get request, right? And to this method we have to input our API. Okay, so we know our endpoint. So copy this and pass it here. Okay, and here we are waiting for the response. So when we got the response, we have to update into our state. Okay, this cake data and any state, either it is a Redux or Redux toolkit or Justin or any other third-party state management library. The main rule is we never directly modify the state, but we can generate a new state and return that state. Okay, so it involves few logical steps while we are updating the more internal properties inside of the state. So one of the best solution when we are using the state is to integrate the immer library. So what is using of benefit of using in immer library means the code we will write like changing the state directly, but internally it will generate a new state based on our code what we write. Okay, so it is, so we don't need to write more logical code. Okay, to update the state we will write simple code like it's it looks like we are directly changing the state, but internally it won't change the state directly. Immer will handle. Okay, so we can use Immer as well, just like dev tools. Okay, so let me fetch the Immer from Justin slash middleware slash Immer. Okay, and now just like dev tools, I can use Immer and wrap this entire set arrow function. Okay, so Immer Okay, that's it. That is the simple integration step to integrate the immer. Okay, now what I will do now to once we got the response, I want to push the data into my cake data property inside of the state. For that, I can use this set variable, and this set variable takes the state with arrow function. Okay, and here I can directly assign cake data property with my API response. Okay, API response dot data. Okay, if we don't use immer, we cannot update state like this directly. We have to return the new state. Okay, so that is my logic or async function I need in my cake store file. Now I have to consume it in my all cakes to invoke the API call. So what I will do, since it is a method, right? I have to get the reference of this method. Just like how I am getting this cake data, I can write same code for getting the reference of the method also. Okay. So get cake API call use store, and state will be the input for the arrow function, and state dot get API. Okay. So here for a property, it is returning data. For a method, it will return the reference of the method. Okay. Now I will invoke the API call inside of my use state. Okay. So use effect arrow function. Okay. And here I can call get cake API. Okay. I think that's it. We are good. If I go to my application, I can see API call invocation, and I am able to see the response data stored into the store, and that store data is read by this all cakes property, and the response will be rendered to the UI. Let's check it. See, I am able to see the data. If I inspect element, okay, and go to network calls, and if I reload again, see, I am getting the API response. Okay, and if I go to Redux tool, see, initially state will be empty array, right? The state data is empty, and next it is updated with my API response. So that's it. We are done with read operation using Zustand state management library. Okay, our next focus is to implement the create operation for creating a new item and pushing that new item into our store so that that data will be rendered on our UI. Okay. So now our focus is to implement the create operation. So first let's create one more page level component. Okay. So in that component, I am going to implement a form for creating the new item. So let me create a new page level component like add cake.js. Now let's configure route for our add cake component. So go to app component. Here let's add one more route tag and specify the path like add cake and element or component tag should be registered. Okay. Creating item means we have to invoke the post HTTP post request, right? So we know our async methods we are directly create in our cake store file. So here let's create one more file like add cake API, one more method, okay, async method. And to this method we should pass the payload of our form, okay. and constant API response, await, Axios, post, and for post request, I can use same URL. Okay, so copy that, but here we have to pass second parameter, that is nothing but our payload. Okay, so here we are waiting for response. Once we got the response, that means in the response I will get a newly created record. Okay, so I have to push that newly created record into my cake data property. So what I can do, so using set and the arrow function inside it with the state as input. Okay, state dot cake data dot push API response dot data. So this is our async method for creating the new item as well as updating the response data into our store. So now let's go to our add cake component. First, let's define a form here. Okay. So first, let me add Bootstrap container. Okay. Add some margin top, and inside of it, let me create a row and a column. Okay, these should be imported. Let me import row and call. Okay, and now let's specify style like call MD8. We know, right? In general, Bootstrap divides row into 12 column size. So I am taking 8 columns to represent my form, and offset MD2 means I want space on both sides of the form. Okay, so that my form looks at the center. So here let's add legend like form heading. Okay, create a new cake, and let's add here our React Bootstrap form field. Okay, so go to React Bootstrap website. So go to components, and here you can see forms link. Click on it, and here let me copy this form group sample. Okay, and add here and import form. Okay, and from here I no need this text. Okay, and remove this ID name. Okay, and placeholder, remove this placeholder, remove the label, and type will be the text. So I want 3 form fields, one for name, one for cost, one for image URL. To recall our db.json, that is our response data. Okay, so now what I can do, I will duplicate it couple of times. Okay, and here I will name it like name, and label name will be name. Okay, and this will be cost, label name will be cost, and this will be image URL, image URL. Okay, for reading the variables form data, I will use useref variable. Okay, let me create 3 variables that are type useref. Okay, so constant name equal to useref, which is a React hook. Okay, initially empty value. So constant cost useref, constant image URL, and some unwanted import, remove it. So these are my useref variables. I can map them to my form field. So here form control will render as a text box once it render on UI. So to this we have to map them using ref attribute, and to the ref attribute we have to map with our variable names. Okay. Okay, and we should have a button for submit the form, right? So here let me add a React Bootstrap button. Okay, namespace imported or not imported, and variant primary type button. Okay, it should be add, and we have to add a click event for it. So I will add a handler here like add cake. So this will be my handler. So register with the button click. So on click handle it. Okay. And here I am going to invoke the API call, right? Create API call. So let's make it async. Okay. We know to get how to get the reference of this method, right? So here we can use our use car store hook. Okay. And inside of it, I can specify state and the state dot method name. What is our method name? Add cake API. Okay, so it's going to give the method reference. So constant add cake API call equal to okay. So now I have to invoke this method here. So first let's prepare the payload. So let payload, okay, and we know payload type name, cost, image URL. So these names should be given, okay. Name, cost, image URL. And we can read from the useref variables. So I will use those variables. So name dot current dot value. So it's going to give the text field value. Okay. Same way name dot cost dot current dot value. Okay. And here also image URL dot current dot value. But here this cost reference variable, whatever we read useref variable, they return string only. So I have to convert it explicitly to number. Okay, convert it as number. And now I can call the add cake API call and pass the payload. Since it is a asynchronous call, I can await it here. So once the data is saved and updated into our store, then I have to navigate back to my home page. For that, I can use the constant navigate variable of type use navigate that loads from the React router DOM. Here I can write navigate and specify the path. Home path is simply slash. Okay. Now we have to do some work in our all cakes.js because by default we land onto our home page. So we have to somehow navigate from home page to add cake form, right? So for that I'm going to create a button here like add button. On clicking that button I am able to navigate to my add cake component route. Okay, so here let me add one more row and call and define styles like so class name. So I will give like call md4 offset md4. Okay, and inside of it let me create the button bootstrap react bootstrap button. Okay, variant primary type button. So on clicking button, I have to navigate to my add cake component. So for that, let me create a variable like navigate, which is of type use navigate from React router DOM. Okay. So since it is one line of code for my click event, right? So I am directly use arrow function for click event. Okay. Instead of that arrow function, I will use my navigate variable, and I want to navigate to where add cake. So copy this route and paste it here. Okay. Now let's test it. If I go to my application, see here we can observe add button displaying. Now if I click on add, see I got create a new cake form and open the network calls to check my post call, save call. Okay. So here let me create new cake like Black Forest, some $200, and let's add some random image. Okay, and try to save it. See, I am able to see my newly added record if I go to network calls, and if you check here, I have successfully created my API call. But if you see here, one more call, that is my get call. While we navigate back to our home page, we are invoking, right? So instead of calling the API call, what we can do, I can utilize the store, because after saving, we are navigate back to home page. Instead of calling the API call again, I can fetch the data from the store, right? So now what I will do, so let me add this item again. For that, let's go to db.json file. Just remove the newly added record. So whatever we add records, those records will be added here. If we update, this document will be updated. If we delete, this ID record from this document will be deleted. So for now, let's remove this document and let's go to our website, reload. Okay, now I have single item. So let's go and do our code change. So go to my all cakes component. So here, whenever we render component, we are calling the get cake API call. Instead of doing it directly, what I can do, if all cakes, which is nothing but getting the data from the store, right? Cake data. So I will use this variable all cakes dot length. Okay, equal to 0. Then only I want to call it API call. Okay, so save it and reload the page. Since when we reload the page, state there won't be no state, so API call will be invoked. You can see here. And if I try to create again my item, okay, so let's create item and check network calls. Now we will see there won't be a get API call after saving the record. So I am clicking on add button. So my item is displaying. If I go to here, see, I have only one API call, that to post request. That means for creating the record. So once we create, we will get the response, right? That response I am pushing into the store. So store, this use cake store is a hook, automatically reflects the changes whatever happens inside of the store. Okay, that is why we are able to see our newly added record was rendering on the UI. Okay, so this is how we can do create operation using the Zustand state management library. Next, we are going to focus on update operation. Now, our main focus is an update operation. Okay, so let's create one more page level component like edit cake component. Okay, edit cake component. Okay, now let's configure route for our edit cake component. So go to app component, add new route tag and specify the path, and here specify like edit cake. Okay, and I want a dynamic value in my URL. So that value is nothing but my ID of the record I want to edit. Okay, so I will give a placeholder like colon ID. That means dynamic placeholder in the URL. Okay, and specify the element. Okay, now to implement the update operation, first let's create a method in our store for invoking our update API call. So go to our cakestore.js. Here, just like add cake API and get cake API, I will add one more method like update cake API. Okay, it will be a async function and it will receive payload. So constant API response, await it, axios dot put for update. Okay, and here in the put URL we should have our ID value. So my URL should be dynamic, so I will use backticks and copy this entire URL. Okay, and slash ID I have to pass the dynamic value. So what I will do, I can use dollar and flower brackets payload.id, and second parameter will be the entire payload. Okay, once we receive the updated API response, I have to push that updated API data into the state. So I can use state set variable and the state variable. Okay, so here first I want to remove the old data from my state. So what I will do, let cake state. Okay, now state dot cake data dot filter it. So I want to remove the old data of my updated item. So ID equal to not equal to payload dot ID. Okay, I am removing it. So after removing, what I will do, I will push the newly updated data that I receive from my API response. Okay, so cake dot push my API response dot data, and finally I will assign that data to my cake data value. Okay, cake data. Now let's go to our edit cake component. So whenever we entered into our edit cake component, so it contains the update form. So whenever I entered, I have to read the dynamic value, which is nothing but ID value in my URL. For that, I can use params that loads from the React router. Okay, and equal to constant, and its variable must match with our dynamic placeholder in the route. So copy from here and assign it. Now it will automatically read the dynamic value, nothing but our ID value from the URL. Okay. So I have to get the data from the store, right? So that I can populate the data into my update form. So to get the data, what we will do in general, use cake store, and inside of it we will pass state, and it will going to read the state dot or cake data property, but it will return entire all collection of cakes in my store, right? But I want to only specific item I want to read. So for that, what I will do, I am going to create a selector. Okay, here in the car store. So this logic will be out of our store. Okay. So here I will create a collector method like export constant. I will name that selector method like get cake by ID, and this function will have ID as a input parameter. Now what I will do, use store in general expects the arrow function with state as the input, right? So here I will return the arrow function, okay, with state as a input. Now here what I will do, I filter the data, okay. Let cake equal to state dot cake data dot filter c dot id equal to this id value will be a number string by default. Here use params read it as a string, so I will convert it as a number and compare it. Okay, so if data exists, then I have to return first value as my output. So cake of index of 0. Okay. If no data, I simply return null. Now I can pass this get cake by ID selector into my use cake store hook. Okay. So go to our edit cake and here remove this and try to access the get cake by ID. Okay, that loads from the our cake store file. Okay, and here pass the ID value. Now I am going to store that value into the variable like cake to edit. Okay, so now let's try to assign this data into my form and check whether we are able to read the data from our store to edit the item. Okay, so now what I will do, I am going to take some of the code from my add component. Okay, so first thing is let me import this useref because I am going to use useref variables just like in the add cake component. Okay, so I want these three variables. Okay, now let me copy the form from the add cake component. So from the container, let's copy entire thing and add it over here. And let's import the Bootstrap component namespaces. Okay, so copy this line and add it here. Okay, now the changes here we have to do, change the form heading like update a cake. Okay, and I can leave these ref variables. And here let me, for now, let me give a empty arrow function. And button name should be update. Okay, and I have to populate my form with the item to edit, right? So what I will do here, I will use effect. Okay, and here if cake to edit, and here I can listen for the changes in the cake to edit. Okay, so if cake to edit data exists, then what I will do, I am going to populate the data to my form. So I will use this ref variables. Okay, name dot current dot value equal to cake.edit.name. Okay, same way all the properties I have to populate. Dot value equal to cake to edit cost. Okay, similarly image URL dot current dot value cake to edit dot image URL. Okay, and let's try to check whether we are able to populate the data into our update form, which reads from the store. Okay, so to check it in all cakes, I have to add the edit button. So here, let me add a button, edit button. Okay, variant primary type button, and it should be the edit button. Okay, and on click. So on click, what I will do, I will use arrow function, and we have a navigate property here. If you check, we have a navigate property. I'm going to use that property here. Okay, and I'm going to create the dynamic route here. Okay, let's copy actual route for edit. Copy up to here and dollar and flower bracket specify the cake.id. Okay, now let's test whether we are able to see the update form with some item to edit. So now here you can see the edit button. If I click on edit button, see, by default data is populated, that is loading from the our store. Same way you can edit any item. Okay, so now we have to target on update button click event. Okay, that means it should invoke the update API call. So now what I can do in the edit component, I will create a update handler. Okay, const update handler. Okay, I am going to register this for my update button. So here I can directly pass. Okay, so now first get the reference from my store for update API call. So constant update API call use cake store and state arrow function state dot and what is the method name? Update cake API. Okay, now I get the method reference. So I can invoke that method reference here. So before invoking that method, I have to prepare the payload, right? Because I need to pass the update values to the server. So what I will do here, already we preparing payload for create. Same payload I can copy and add it here. But one change is we have to pass ID value also. Okay, ID, and that should be a number. So I can use ID. Okay, this value I am reading this variable. Okay, now I can invoke so it should be async method, and here I will await it and I call update API call. Okay, and to that API call I will pass the payload. Once API call and everything is successful, I must navigate back to my home page. For that I can use navigate variable of type use navigate. Okay, and here I can navigate back to my home page. Okay, that's it. Let's check it. Okay, so let's click on edit and open network calls to observe our update API call. Okay, let me change this cost to some 500. Okay, and click on update. Not updating. There's something. This is from our store, I believe. So if I go to the car store, cake store, sorry, it is already cakes data I am filtering here, right? So remove that and save it again. API call is successful, but updating the data into my store is not working. Okay, let's try to update again. Okay, now let's give some value like 750. And if I click on now check this as well, network calls. Okay, if I click on update, see, I am successfully navigate back to my home page and 750 is updated in the store as well. And you can check the API call also. See, request method put, that is nothing but update API call. Okay, so that's all about the update operation using Zustand library in the ReactJS application. Okay, next we are going to focus on the delete operation. Our main focus is to implement the delete operation. So in our car store, let's implement the delete API call. Okay, so let me add a new method for my delete cake API, and it should be a async method, and it will receive input parameter nothing but the ID to delete. Okay, wait, axios dot delete method we have to use it. So it should contains dynamic value nothing but our ID, right? So we have to use backticks and we have to frame the URL like this. So let's copy this URL and paste here, and here input parameter is directly ID value. Okay. Now once the API is successful, we have to remove the item from our store as well. Okay. So for that, what I can do, I can use set variable. Okay, state and state dot take data equal to state dot take data dot filter not equal to ID value. Okay, so that is our API call implementation. Okay, now I want to create a model pop-up. Okay, so I want to display it as a confirmation, delete confirmation. So whenever user clicks on the delete button, I want to show that pop-up. So on that pop-up, we will have two buttons like cancel and confirm delete. If user clicks on confirm delete, at that time we have to invoke our API call. Okay. So for that, let me create a one more separate component. Okay. So I will create in the components and shared folder. I will name it like delete confirmation. Okay, now here we are going to add the React Bootstrap model. For that, go to Bootstrap website, go to components, and in components, we can see model. Okay, from this model, let's pick a sample. Okay, I will picking the second one, second example. Copy this HTML, paste it here. Okay, and also import the namespaces for model. And in that model, we have button also. So let's copy those two namespaces. Okay, now here show model property is there, right? It receives Boolean value. If the value is true, then model will be displayed. If the value is false, model will be hidden. So what I will do, I will make this component as generic. That means all the properties to this component will come from the parent. So I'm going to use props. Okay, and I will name them like props dot show model. Okay, all these are my custom names which will come from my parent component. In our case, I'm going to use this delete confirmation in all cakes component. So all cakes is my parent component. Okay, so on hide is an event. For now, let me give empty arrow function. Okay, and heading also I want to make it dynamic. Props dot title. Body as well. Props dot body. Okay, here also close button. Let me give empty arrow function for now. Okay, and here button will be, I want red color and it should be confirm delete. Okay, here also let's assign the empty arrow. Okay, this is my generic delete confirmation model. So I have to use it inside of my all cake. So go to all cake component. So here let me render the delete confirmation model. Okay, we have to pass the properties. So what are the properties? First will be show. So for show, I am passing like show model. So show model, it should be a Boolean value. So what I will do, I will create a variable like show model in my component use state variable. Okay, constant state variable, right? So I have to use state and value will be false. Okay, and I can pass now this show model. By default, false means default model will be hidden. Okay, and next property title, we have title, right? So I will pass title. So title, I will directly give the string like delete confirmation. Okay, and second will be the body. So here also I will give message like are you sure to delete this item? Okay, okay, now let's create a method so that on clicking that method will be registered for my delete button. So on clicking it, our delete confirmation model will be open. So let me create a handler like open delete confirmation model handler. Okay, and it's going to receive the ID value that we want to delete. Okay, so I want to configure this method to my delete button. So let's add a delete button next to our edit button. Okay, so button variant equal to primary danger so that I can get red colored button and type equal to button delete. Okay, so here what I can do, I can register. So on click event. Okay, here I will create arrow function because I have to pass input parameter to my handler, right? So let's create arrow function and pass this method. and to that method I have to pass my cake ID. Okay, so that is my open delete confirmation model. Here in this model we have to write a logic. So here we are receiving item ID to delete, right? We have to store it. For that I am going to create one more state variable, okay, like item ID to delete. Okay, initially I will give just 0, means nothing to delete. Okay, now I can set the input value to this variable. Okay, and also I have to show the model, right? That means I have to make show model true. So I can use set show model true so that I can open the pop-up. Now let's create one more handler for closing the pop-up. So I will write one more handler like close delete confirmation model handler. Okay. So here what I can do, I can use same variables here and I reset back to, it will be a 0 and this will be false so that pop-up will be closed, and this method should be passed to our delete confirmation model. Okay, so what I will do, I will use same variable names for both left hand right hand side, but you can change or you can give the names whatever you like. Okay, so let's register this to my hide button, hide event. Okay, so arrow function props dot, simply referencing the parent method. Okay, and same method I can use for close button as well, right? So props dot close. Okay, now let's check whether we are able to open the model and able to close the model or not. Okay, sorry, here again creating arrow function, no need this, delete this one. Okay, and here is our delete button. If I click on delete button, see, I am able to show the confirmation delete. If I click on this cross button, model is perfectly hiding. And if I click on this close button, it is also hiding. Now, if I click on confirm delete, we haven't implemented the logic for invoking the API call. So let's go and implement that logic. So we know our API call is in my store, right? So we have to read that API call. So constant delete cake API call. Okay, use cake store, and just like get API call, we have to get the reference of the delete API call method here. Okay, state dot, what is my method in the cake store? Delete API. So now the method reference is assigned to this variable. Okay, so now what we can do, we will create a one more handler, constant delete confirm handler. Okay, and it should be a async method because we have to invoke our API call. Okay, and here I can await and I can call delete cake API and I can send the item ID to delete. So once item is successfully deleted, we simply close our model, right? So add this logic here. Okay, now we have to pass this handler to our delete confirmation model. So go to our delete confirmation model and props dot Okay, now let's test it and open the networks tab so that we can check our delete API call. Okay, click on delete button. Now click on confirm delete. See, item is removed from UI. That means item is removed from store. And if you check the network call, you can see our delete API call, request method delete. And if I reload also, we won't get that deleted item because it is successfully deleted at the server also. Okay. So like this, we can implement the delete operation using the Zustand store management library. Okay. I hope this video delivered some useful content to you all. If you like the video, please do like and subscribe to my channel. Soon we are going to meet with new videos. Until then, signing.